So on Web Street, right, where I was saying we pair the investors up with the experienced operators. One of the bits of experience we learned over time that is an absolute requirement now is they must have bought a business previously, particularly an online business. So
I kind of see Web Street as an investment vehicle where you guys are the operator and you're managing this as an investment portfolio for other investors.
yeah, let me explain that a little bit. So actually, we're not the operator. What we do is we find operators kind of in our network. Yeah, for sure. We had this problem where we have buyers come to us and they're like, look, I kind of want to get into space. I've never run an online business before. I don't really have any skills, but I want to be involved. And so, we were like, look, honestly, you should probably either build one yourself or buy a small one and like dabble with it because you don't want to put all your money into this online business to replace your income, let's say.
Hello, and welcome to the How to Exit podcast, where we introduce you to a world of small to medium business acquisitions and mergers. We interview business owners, industry leaders, authors, mentors, and other influencers with the sole intent to share with you what it looks like to buy or sell a business. Let's get rolling.
I want to highly recommend you get Acquisition Aficionado magazine. Every month, Acquisition Aficionado magazine brings you tactics for business buying and selling you won't find anywhere else. Learn firsthand from industry leaders who share their success stories, featuring in-depth interviews and stories from leading figures in the business acquisition industry. This multi-platform mobile magazine speaks to acquisition entrepreneurs wherever they are in the journey. And I want you to visit acquisitionaficionado.com today. Hello and welcome to the How to Exit podcast. Today I'm here with Cook. He is a founder of Empire Flippers and Web Street. This is going to be fun. I don't know how I managed to get 200 and something episodes and not have interviewed you. I think we've had a couple people who worked for you on the show. But thank you for being here today. Thank you for taking time out of your travels. I know you're world traveling and do your thing. So to share your time and experiences is really cool. So thank you for doing that.
Thanks, Ron. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Cool. So we always start off with the origin story. The long-term running joke is you were born, you ended up on a show about mergers and acquisitions. How in the hell did you end up here? Right? So can you kind of give us the origin story of how things were created and, how you ended up where you're at now?
Yeah. So my business partner and I were working at well, first off, let me tell you, we had an outsourcing company. Well, let me put it this way. We had a real estate company in the US, right? And we were, mortgage brokers and we were hiring mortgage brokers. And we ended up working with this Filipino that we had found on Craigslist.
Mhm.
And the mortgage business went bust. But we were really amazed with kind of the value we got from working with this Filipino like halfway around the world. And so we ended up working at this local, both of us were like mid-level managers at this local SEO company. And they needed to hire people. They needed to really scale their operations. And we said, look, we have a connection in the Philippines. We can do it cheaper. They're super bright, super capable. We can like help you out with that. And so they let us do that. We hired like 5 or 6 people. We went out to meet them, flew
Mhm.
out to the Philippines and realized they were all working out of her house. Like she had them like in a closet with like plastic tables and like those big old like CRT monitors. And we were like, dude, we're in a sweatshop here. This is not good. So we went back to our bosses and said, look, why don't we're getting the entrepreneurial itch again
Mhm.
after our failed mortgage business. We said, look, why don't we set up an outsourcing company and we'll outsource ourselves. We'll set up the outsourcing company. We'll now be contracted to you instead of employed by you. And they went for it.
Mhm.
So my business partner and I moved out to the Philippines. We set up an office. We started to get the outsourcing company going. And within 6 months, they started cutting back on us heavily.
Oh, no.
We thought they were going to stick with us long term. They ran into financial issues. And when you run into financial issues, the first place you cut are contractors. You don't cut employees, right? So we were hurting. We, had to get rid of some of our staff. We, were like scaling down. And we got to this point where we were like, oh my God, we're gonna have to close the office down. We're losers. We're gonna end up back in the US, like with our tail between our legs. And we need to find something to do with these people, right? We can keep them employed and we can find new clients. So we figured out a way to basically create niche websites. These are websites about silly things. One of them was like catconstipation.net. We had cremationprices.org, things like this, really niche stuff. And we started building these websites and we monetized them with something called Google AdSense. Google AdSense would pay you anything from like 30 cents to a buck 50 a click if someone was on your website and they clicked one of those ads. So that's how it makes money.
Mhm.
We started building these sites and we started building them at scale. We started building, a dozen a week, 2 dozen a week, and all these niche sites were going up and they made money. And we said, "Oh, that's pretty cool." The problem is, like, we were kept investing money and they were making small amounts of money, but, like, how do we recoup our costs? And we realized people wanna buy these sites. So if I've got a site making $100 a month, someone will buy it from me for, $2,000, $2,400. And we we're like, "That's pretty cool." So we started selling them, and then, we were kind of like our own supplier, right? Because we were building these sites and selling them. Eventually, that process where we built those sites didn't work anymore. And so we said, look, we'd always resisted other people want to sell with us. And we said, look, why don't we just let them sell with us? So we started letting them sell their sites with us. And these were $20,000 sites, $40,000 sites, $100,000 sites, to the point where we started selling six and even seven and later eight-figure businesses. So we scaled up the team. We had a huge Filipino staff. We started bringing over Americans to the Philippines. And then later on abroad, just had people live or work wherever they want, and we built an online business brokerage. We've now done, I think it's like $511 million for the sales. We got a team of, I think, just under 50 people, living and working all around the world.
That's awesome. It's funny is I used to flip websites back then. I might have even bought one from you guys. I used to buy those type of AdSense made for AdSense sites, and then I would tweak them up, make them graphic, big use better have my graphics people, which was usually in India or the Philippines, make it look nicer. Maybe even I had a little bit of my own personal blog network, so route my traffic to it and stuff like that. And occasionally, I would sell something. So, but I would this is back before there was an Empire Flippers or any of those websites out there. I was doing,
Yeah.
what was the forum called? The Warrior Forum. There were Warrior forums.
Warrior form.
Yeah,
Yep.
I would buy them on there. So somebody got really good at spoofing traffic and everything, and I overpaid for one. It was like 20 or 30,000 bucks. But the day I got it, everything's like within a day or two, everything stopped. Like no revenue was coming in, no traffic was coming in. They had a personal blog network of their own, and they just turned out, rerouted all their own links one
Yeah, I
of their
remember
other
those, the
assets.
PBNs.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
and
funny enough, so the Warrior Form is how we got started in AdSense.
yeah,
So we'd read someone's kind of like silly post about, oh, you can build these sites and make money with AdSense targeting exact match domains,
mhm,
EMDs,
yep.
is what it was called. And so that's kind of like that was the thing we started that ended up making money for us and got us started in the business.
Yeah, we did that. We built some software for, companies that weren't online yet. We took their inventory or whatever, and we built a little, MySQL database and put their product in it and build a fairly simple product page for them or whatever, and then turn around and sell it to them. Like, we'd sign up as
Yeah,
their license,
sure.
like, as one of their clients to sell
Yeah.
their stuff, and we'd build it all out online, and then we turn around and try to sell it back to them. So we did a couple of things, but I got burned pretty hard on one of those deals, and it was too easy to spoof things back then. I got out of the space and went doing something else, and here I am full circle and back looking at things again. Right?
Yeah, there's a lot of ways people, I mean, even back in the day, they would try to fake the traffic.
Mm,
They would use analytics that was not Google Analytics or not clicky or whatever, and so they'd have all these kind of like BS analytic numbers. And
yeah.
yeah, I mean, we've evolved the process over now 13, 14 years on like how to spot the scammers, and we have a really good filtering process to keep them out. So I mean, ideally, what we want to be is not like where you're having to find a diamond in the rough, where you're having to dig a needle in the haystack, so to
Mhm.
speak. We want it to be a bunch of businesses that are quality, that are actually earning, that have verified traffic and earnings that you can look at, and you just need to find the right one for you,
Right.
right? It's not necessarily because maybe you hate, I don't know, it's all about ceiling fans. You're like, God, I want to own a ceiling fan e-commerce business, right? But something else is super attractive to you. You're like, oh, Beanie Baby reseller. Yeah, I'm into that.
I'm one of these guys who, I'm not big on the e-commerce, and it's just me. It's a logistics thing. I call it stuff. I'll be nice and call it SNB, stuff in a or SIB, stuff in a box. Not what
Yeah.
I usually call it. But as a matter of fact, one of my old business partners, he challenged me one day. He's a performance coach for a while there, and he knew my distaste for shipping and logistics and all that type of he said, "Let's just do something challenging. Let's do an e-commerce business." So to be funny, we thought we were being funny. We called it SIB, shit in a box is what it stood for.
Right.
Products, LLC. And when we signed up for the Shopify, he had a technical difficulty and he had to call Shopify and we were like setting it up and they asked him what that stood for. And as soon as he explained it was shit in a box, they didn't think it was funny. They basically banned him for life. They told him
Oh
that
my god, I think they laugh at that.
I thought they
Yeah,
would too,
that's
like, I
funny.
think they were a little sensitive that, we were kinda playing the game that most of these e-commerce sites are selling you plastic crap that's not worth anything, and we were
Yeah.
doing this just mainly because the exercise of can we learn this and make something, I don't know how do you put it. It was a test of stretching our own entrepreneurial abilities. It was something that we knew we weren't that great at, the logistics of storing things, we knew that things had changed quite a bit, like, we could have Amazon do fulfillment and all this other stuff, so we were just trying to learn something new.
Yeah.
But,
The Amazon businesses really took off. I mean, there's a lot of people that made a lot of money selling Amazon businesses or just even straight up e-commerce business. The problem with e-commerce or Amazon FBA is that forget about the shit in the box. Let's say you're selling a cool quality product that you've sourced and you've actually created or whatever, and there's lots of those. Problem though is your all your profits are tied up in inventory.
yeah.
So, because if you're growing, let's say you're growing this business, then you're constantly trying to add more inventory, and all of your profits are being reinvested in inventory. You really don't get out of that until you sell the business. So you've got entrepreneurs that are like they've taken loans, they've taken credit card debt, put it all into this inventory, and then they get, assuming they've done that and they grew well, then they get a nice payday at the end. But they're kind of like they're riding lean until they actually exit the business. So that's the problem I see with e-commerce. One of the good business models I've seen is for this shit in the box, and this is kind of shit in the box, but the recurring model,
Yeah.
right? So it's kind of the monthly whatever, the monthly wine or the monthly dog toy or whatever it is, and every month you get a new product, a new thing that's in that particular niche. And the sweet thing about that is you can get recurring. Sometimes you can charge 12 months up front at a discount. So you can get like, you can like kind of upfront that money or get on the recurring basis, which is going to make your company more valuable because there's less, ups and downs.
Out of all the things you guys have listed over the years, how long has, Empire Flippers been around?
We started as AdSense Flippers in 2010 and rebranded in 2013 to Empire Flippers.
So, it's been a while. What's the craziest thing you guys have ever sold?
Craziest thing we've ever sold. I'll tell you a story. So we had a guy, I think it was in Pakistan,
Mhm,
sell, pretty sure it's Pakistan, sold a, I don't know, $28,000 affiliate site.
mhm.
Similar to an AdSense site where, you get paid for people clicking on referral links and then buying those products and they get small piece of in commission on whatever is purchased. They sold the site with us and no problem. And it sold and we got the money. We're going to, send him the money. We wired his bank the money. And, that's kind of it. That's the end of the transaction. We thank him for his business, whatever. A couple days later, he gets back to us. He's like, hey, I didn't get the money. And we're like, okay, this happens sometimes where, the wire's in transit or something, something's going on here, whatever. Just give it a couple of days. Gives it like, 3 or 4 days more. And I was like, I don't have the money. And so we're like, whoa, this is weird. So we look into it. We check, we go to our bank and our bank is like, no, we absolutely sent the wire. The wire sent like we do not have the money. It's gone to his bank. And, his bank and him are saying, "We don't have the money at all. There's no money in here. We didn't get it." What happened is the Office of Financial Controls from the US stepped in, snatched the money out of the ether, in the middle of the transfer from our bank to this. I didn't know they could do that,
Well,
but apparently they can just snatch money from anywhere. So they stepped in and snatched it, and the reason was his name matched, some terrorist somewhere, right? So fun. So it turns out it wasn't him. So I think like a week or two later, he ended up getting the money. But that was pretty weird where we had, the government step in. I'm sure we're all on lists now for something. So that was pretty wild.
you created the storyline is so far you were doing it made for AdSense sites, you started flipping them, you started selling other people's products. When did WebStreet come along? When did you guys decide to start being I kinda see WebStreet as an investment vehicle where you guys are the operator and you're managing this as an investment portfolio for other investors.
Yeah, let me explain that a little bit. So actually, we're not the operator. What we do is we find operators kind of in our network. So here's kind of how we viewed it, right? Or here's a way to view it. If you're you go to the horse race or whatever, right? You're effectively betting on the jockey who's going to pick the horse, right? And this is an experienced jockey that's going to pick the horse he's going to ride. What I mean by that is we pair passive investors up with experienced operators. These are operators that have run businesses in this niche or in this, area. They've acquired businesses previously, so they have experience. And we're going to pair them up with those operators. So the investors are going to put their money in. The operators put skin in the game too, so they put money up as well, and they buy the business. So the operator is putting in 5%, but effectively gets 20% of the business for his expertise. So he's only putting 5%, gets 20, and the investors are putting up the rest of the money for the business. So they're able to buy the business, then he operates it, and we have an accounting team that determines or looks over the cash flow. And these are cash flowing businesses that distribute every quarter. So we've done it now. I think we started in 2018 or so. We've done, I think, we raised $47 million to buy some of the businesses, and we're in fund, I think, 10 right now. We've changed a lot along the way. Like the first rounds, we had, I'll say, I think it was like 5 operators in the first round. And you could pick and choose the operator you wanted to work with. So you could pick operator 1, 2, 4, and 5, let's say, and skip 3. Now it's just you, and when you invest in the round, you're investing in all the operators in that round. So that's changed a little bit over time, but yeah, that's the gist of it, if that makes sense.
It's interesting. It's kind of similar to the independent sponsor route. Like, there's a in the search fund method, there's a way where you can be an independent sponsor where you go out, you find the business, you pair it with a private equity, they fund the whole thing, and it's usually an 80-20 split, right?
Yeah.
The person doing the funding gets 80% of the company, and you get to be, operator or not operator depending on your decision with the private equity and what they wanna do. But usually it's, you're playing the search game for, somebody with deep pockets as a single investor in most of those cases.
We run into those guys a lot.
Yeah,
Not all the time.
yeah.
Some of them are legitimate, but a lot of time they don't actually have the private equity on board. They're just saying they do, and so they're shopping listings and hoping they can find. They all read the Harvard Business School book on M&A, right? And they're
Right.
all like, "Oh, I'll throw up a website. I pay $1,000, get this website up, and I'm in business." And yeah, I mean, the ones that do kind of have their shit together, well, if you've done some deals before legitimately, then that's helpful. But when you have like communication with the private equity group, right, you've got interest from them, their kind of criteria, you're going to be a better searcher for them.
I know some guys I've interviewed a couple of guys who have done it, to the tune of buying a $20 million manufacturing facility and stuff like that. So in that search fund realm, I've never seen anybody do a sponsored search for a web-enabled product. I'm sure there's guys out there doing it. Usually, these private equity guys are trying to go a little bigger. They're wanting, a $10 million revenue company,
Well, it's funny, so private equity, I'd say 8 years ago, 9 years ago, they wouldn't get out of bed for a business valuation under 20 million.
Yeah,
They're like, look, just not really worth our time. And then we saw a change where they were going down to 10,
yeah.
12. And then it changed again where they go down to 5, not much under 5, 4 or 5 million. And we're surprised. So there were private equity groups that started to look smaller. I'd say over the last 3 or 4 years, that's been kind of like where they're at, where some of them are at. Now, some of the larger firms can't bother with still under anything under 20, 30 million. But a lot more of them have been doing those smaller deals than they used to do. And as we kind of scaled up and did larger and larger deals, we're getting into the 4 million, the 8 million. I think the largest deal we've done so far is like just under 14 million.
Mhm.
We're starting to play in their space. We started dealing with a lot more of the private equity groups than we did in the early days when we were selling, $50,000 affiliate sites.
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with it just got a lot more competitive, right? There's a lot more dry powder sitting out there. There's a lot more. If you look at different industries, like if you go outside of the web space, they're all fighting over the heat and air companies, and there's only so many of them doing more than 4 million in EBITDA. Because that used to be like
Yeah.
we don't- most of them for the longest time they wouldn't dip below 4 million in EBITDA, right? And now we're hearing I know of plumbing companies that are getting popped up at less than 2 million in EBITDA as add-ons to something that's already local to them that they've already acquired.
It's funny because you know a lot about the offline space. I know nothing. Like the whole time we're strictly online businesses. It has to have a component where it can be, run from anywhere. Sometimes they have some local stuff, but
Mm,
it really needs to be an online business strictly to work with Empire Flippers or Web Street.
mhm.
So we've really stuck to that model. It's been great for us because we have buyers from everywhere, right? And then we want them to be able to run it. But yeah, the offline stuff's really fascinating. I have a buddy of mine, Ace Chapman. I used to have a podcast with him back in the day,
Oh, really?
and he does some offline deals. Yeah, do you know him?
I've interviewed him. I like him. He's a cool guy.
He was just in Bangkok. We were just hanging out like 3 days ago.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's funny too. He's like, he's on the show and he's like, "You guys aren't gonna watch it. If you guys aren't watching this, you won't know why this is funny." He goes, "My one of my first acquisitions was a line of, sun tanning stations." He's a black guy. So he's like,
Yeah, yeah,
if you
yeah,
weren't
yeah.
watching it and like, if you didn't see who was talking, you wouldn't, have picked up why he thought it was funny. He bought a whole chain of, sun tanning, companies, but one of the
Yeah, that's
brilliant
great.
things he did in the space that I haven't seen yet anybody else do is he would teach people to raise capital when he wanted to sell his company. So if he wanted to buy his company, he'd teach you how to raise the capital to buy it from him. So you pretty much paid him cash. You weren't trying to do creative deal structure or whatever. He'd teach you how to do a micro PE fund, right?
That's funny. Yeah, I mean, just, helping them get cash to give you seemed like a smart thing to do,
Yeah,
right?
do you
It
think more
it
people would
dives
that's why
right.
one thing that I interviewed him probably in the early days. I need to bring him back. I like to bring people back after a while. He was kinda inactive when I pulled him in because he's like he hadn't been
Oh,
doing it
so
for a while.
this reminds me actually. So, in 2021,
Mhm,
Joe and I were looking to sell a portion of Empire Flippers,
mhm,
and we're kind of, we're hold on. Before that,
mhm,
there was a Goldman Sachs guy had spoken to both of us, and he was trying to get us, to manage our wealth, whatever, right?
mhm.
And we're like, look, we've got money, but like a lot of our wealth is tied up in this business. He's like, oh, let me see if I can help you sell that. We're like, okay, all right. So he actually made a bunch of connections for us, and one of the connections was one of the private equity groups. There were two that came in that were looking to buy a portion of our Flippers. Now we went all the way through the process and didn't sell,
Mhm,
which was pretty devastating, I'd say, at that point.
mhm.
But yeah, so it's funny. This Goldman Sachs guy who wants to manage our money is like, no, no, no. Let's just get you a pile of money, and then I can manage it for you. Like, that was his idea. It was
That's a
great.
brilliant way to do things though, right? If you really
Yeah,
think about it, how many buyers came across him was trying to do something creative? A lot of the in the brick and mortar space, a lot of the countries call it one buck chucks, right? We're trying to do a dollar down owner finance deal, right? These zero down money, low money down deals where the owner finances the whole thing. I'm sure he comes across that constantly, especially now that there's 6 gurus teaching it, right?
yes, I was gonna say, dude, everyone's selling that shit. I don't know. I mean, I know why you want to believe that, right? Because it's so compelling. You're like, oh, I don't have to put any money up. I just get this cash flowing business. It's like low to no risk. I don't have any money anyway, so this is a way for me to get in. But I'll tell you, dude, that's bullshit. Like the people buying from Embarkers are not doing these zero money down things. Typically, you'll have some amount of financing. So normally it'd be like 20% maybe seller financing or a note or an
Mhm.
earn out or something, maybe 10%, maybe 30%. But in that ballpark, maybe you have an investor that you went in with as well. Do you split the cash up front or maybe you put in more, but you're putting in the sweat equity? But this like being able to buy deals with no money down is just
I've
it's
inter
trash, dude.
I've interviewed surprisingly, I've interviewed quite a few people that had pulled it off, but it's a unicorn hunt, right? They had to go out and have 1,000 calls over, 14, 18 months, right?
Yeah.
You know
I imagine like a turnaround business, and that's the other thing too. So if the business had declined significantly, we have like all kinds of like stipulations on what businesses will list or sell. If it had gone through like the one that's really needs to be turned around, it's gone through a bit of a shit show. It's not in great shape. Doesn't have much, not profitable, for example.
mhm,
Then we won't list and sell it.
yeah.
So, but in the offline space, I mean, there are a bunch of businesses that are going that have the opportunity, legitimate opportunity, but have gone through like a really bad spell. Maybe they had a down year or whatever that you could maybe work a better deal out. But again, yeah, you're right. You're unicorn hunting. And like there's lots of deals out there. You don't have to go unicorn hunting. There's real deals out there. You can do.
More often than not, it's very highly motivated sellers, right? It's sellers who they gotta retire, maybe they got something medical, a divorce, there's a driving factor for them to retire, and, that's usually the case when you find out why somebody sold with 100% structured financing or as, Carl Allen calls it, annuity deals. Everybody's got their own names for it, right? The reason it happens a lot of times is a really highly motivated seller. But there's other structures that a lot of people get the mistake in that, zero down, dollar down means the owner didn't get anything down. It just means it didn't come out of the buyer's pocket, right? A lot of times
Yeah.
it is an investor. A lot of times it's asset loans and other stuff that they got the money handed over to the seller at the initial phase of it. But, the marketing hype of 0 down or $1 down isn't true to what really happens in most
Yeah, yeah.
cases. In most cases, that seller got something.
Or they wouldn't sell, right?
Right. And it just came from some other source other than the buyer's pockets, and like I said, it's one of the toughest things that these guys can do because they have to talk to not just, 4 or 5 good businesses to find one that they'll fit their thing. They gotta talk to 4 or 500 because they're trying to squeeze that special little deal out. Um,
How familiar are you with the FBA boom and bust over the last few years?
I'm familiar with it enough that, I know that those guys that bought a bunch of those, businesses have got hurt pretty bad, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because they
Yeah,
were
so
paying crazy multiples.
we were part of that. So, I got a, call out of the blue from the New York Times, and I was like, "New York Times?" And so they wanted to interview us and talk to us about kind of the craze that was happening. So, in 2019, definitely into 2020, through COVID, like, online businesses went through the roof,
Mhm.
and particularly these types of businesses are called FBA, Fulfillment by Amazon,
Yeah.
and these are e-commerce businesses that have shipped all their product to Amazon or are selling on Amazon. And Amazon just exploded. Their growth went through the roof. They were selling everything. Everyone was buying everything online. It was insanity. So all these businesses grew like crazy. And about the same time, even before then, 2018, 2019, we saw private equity groups get in the space. Specific, the first one I'd say is Thrasio, but there were a bunch of others that followed. And so they were doing roll-ups. They were like, we're gonna buy up every quality FBA business we can get our hands on, roll it up, and make a ton of money. And Thrasio, we was raising money at over $1 billion valuation. There was a bunch of others that followed. They got to the point where I think once a week or maybe every other week, I would do a call with this like a marketing agency would reach out, we'll pay you $500 for the call. And I'm like, I don't really need the money. And they're like, well, we'll donate to your charity. I'm like, okay, I'll do that. So I get on this call. They won't even tell me who it is beforehand. And I'm talking to like an investor with some Harvard MBAs got, and they're like, look, this is like literally the pitch. Look, we want to do what Thrasio's doing, but we're going to pay more money for the businesses. Right. And I'm like, I don't know, it doesn't sound like a winning idea. I mean, like, plus these like Harvard MBAs, like when you're running an e-commerce business, you have to be in the nuts and the bolts. You know what I mean? You have to know exactly what your widget is, where you're getting it, like, what the feeling from the customer is, and like you have to be in it. And these guys were like gonna manage it, like remotely, just kind of like I was like, dude, no, you need to be all up in this business. So yeah, that didn't grow great. So, but it went really well for a lot of the sellers that sold a lot of these businesses for a ton of money. Now, all these private equity groups had raised debt on adjustable rate notes. And when rates started going up, that's when they found themselves in hot water. Yeah, not able to perform. And a lot of them went belly up. Some of them are selling off some of their businesses for pennies on the dollar. I know some of the people buying those up right now.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been a wild ride.
I have a contact that was we did a course together. I did different courses with different people. Some of them I've interviewed and stuff. We were in one of the courses together and got to know him a little well. And he's like, he had 100 products or so in the FBA world, and his revenue numbers seemed amazing, right? He's doing 65 million in revenue, but they're all lean products, 2, 3, 4, 5% profit margins. So he's not killing it on the profit, but he's okay. And then that happened. This is right when the COVID was hitting and everything. And these guys started offering him multiples of his revenue. And I begged him, I was like, take it, take it, take it.
Really?
Sure enough, he sold everything. One of his children got really ill and he took the exit, for what I know. And we've never heard of him since. He's kind of semi-retired out of it, but he sold every single thing he had. I was like,
Yeah, we help and sell, some of those businesses, some of those private equity groups. Some of them are friends of mine that got their exit. I mean, meaningful exits, retirement exits, right?
yeah,
3, 4, 5, $6 million. So
yeah. A lot of times you just got to have that maturity that you two had to say, wait a second, this isn't where we're at now. Companies fell all the time because of that, by the way. If you
Yeah.
look at like if you watch how the VCs do it, the venture capitalists, very often the founder doesn't make it to the end as the CEO. It's rare. Now you got things like Oracle and Facebook where there are outliers that happens, but in most cases, the guy that can take an idea, turn it into code and make it realized is a different guy that can take that idea and find product market fit and first dollar revenue. And sometimes it's a different guy that takes from $1 revenue or $1 million of revenue to 10 million. And it's
That's 100, 0 to 1 is much harder, and requires a different skill set than 1 to 10. Scale is a totally different ball game. There was a point at which with our company, I think at its biggest was 2021.
mhm,
I think we did, like 15 around 15 million in revenue,
pretty good.
like 30-ish margins.
Mhm,
So we had a damn good year, but it was also probably for me the year that was, and that we were looking to sell at that time. It was also the year for me that was probably the most boring for me. Like, I just felt like we're becoming a little more corporate than I was comfortable with. I kind of like we'd always refer to our business as a pirate ship
mhm.
because we didn't raise any money. My business partner and I own the entire thing, right? Haven't raised any outside capital for Empire Flippers. We were like, this is our pirate ship. We can take it where we want to go. And I felt like we weren't as much of a pirate ship anymore. We're turning into more of a battleship. It doesn't move very fast and can't turn on a dime. And yeah, it's just a little more boring for me. So when we did worse in the following years, 2022 and 2023, we did get down to a size that felt a little more fun again. So that's I realized kind of where my limit was, right?
Mhm.
And I think above like 50, 60 people, 60, 70 people is when it gets, I think we got up to like 90 people or something. And that was kind of less fun for me. So yeah, that was where I was like, yeah, not my thing.
Maturity in your own ego to be able to say that is incredible because a lot of people don't. A lot of people will run a business into the ground because they'll keep growing and it's outside of their scope and of leadership. It
Yeah.
takes a different person to be able to say, you know what, time to bring a CEO in because I want to see this business go to the next level. And I'm not the guy that knows how to drive that, right? I'm pretty good driving pretty much any tractor. I grew up on a farm, right? Any tractor, any truck or anything, but I don't know how good I'd do in a Ferrari. I'd probably wrap myself around a telephone pole, right? And I'm an adrenaline junkie, so if it said 220 on there at least once, have to see if it could really do it.
Well, I'll tell you, like, business partnerships can be tough.
Yeah.
So, Joe, my business partner, and I, we've gotten into all kinds of, like,
Mm,
arguments and, like, disagreements or whatever. The one thing that I always knew is that he's looking out for the company's interests.
mhm.
We might disagree on how we get there, but, like, I always trusted him that we were aligned on that. And so, like, no matter how bad kind of our disagreements or arguments we get, at least we're, like, trying to get to the same goal because we really do drop our egos when it comes to the business. The business is the thing we're trying to make work. So that was helpful even when we're in the scraps.
I see people all the time getting into this space, and they just come out of some course, and like, "I'm looking for a JV partner." I was like, "That's really dangerous, right?" And then they said, "Why?" I said, You'll spend more time with your JV partner than you probably will with your spouse. So
Yeah.
think of it very seriously. Are you willing to marry this other person?" And not in any type of weird, way whatsoever sexually. But just you're gonna spend so much time with this person. Are you really sure that that's the right business partner? I
Emotionally, man. I mean, like you're gonna get in these scripts. Are you good enough with this person? Do you respect them enough? Do they respect you enough to be able to get through those like difficult times, difficult decisions,
Right.
and be aligned and on the same page? That's really tough. It's really tough.
I always joke and say, you know what the number one cause for divorce is, right? It's marriage because you can't get divorced unless you're married. The number two cause for divorce is unmet expectations. It's a failure of communication. Both partners, and this goes with business. The reason I relate this to businesses is both business partners go into this with certain sets of expectations that usually they fail to articulate well enough. And
Mm,
you have to understand that that's going to happen and that you're willing to get past that, that you had expectations of this other person that they didn't even know existed, and they have
yeah.
expectations of you that you didn't even know existed, and so long as you're aware of that and can get past it, you can get past a couple of those first year hurdles. But a lot of reasons they say most businesses fail in the first 5 years. I'd say most of those actually occur because they took on a partner. And at some point, a decision needed to be made, and they couldn't see eye to eye with it, and it tore them apart, right?
Yeah, yeah, my business partner and I, we used to have a podcast together. We did the Empire Lovers podcast,
Yep.
and we would shit all over partnerships. I mean, like, obviously we had a good one,
Yeah.
but like we just see so many of them go so badly that we're like, I think that the best idea is probably not to, but if you do, kind of here's what we did and here's how we managed to make it work.
Yeah. It's funny, it's probably fueled part of your business, right? Failed partnerships is the reason why a lot of businesses have to sell.
Absolutely. So that it's funny. There are like critics. And these critics have never bought or sold a business, so they have no idea. But they're thinking like, why would no one would ever sell a profitable business? Like, why would anyone ever sell it? They're going to keep it. They're going to keep making the money, or whatever. And they just haven't really thought that answer through very well.
Yeah, I've heard them
But
do
that's
that.
a whole bunch of reasons people sell. You mentioned earlier. I mean, people are getting divorced, business partner issues. Those are the tough ones to broker. But other things too, just life events, right? They want to raise a family. They want to spend more time with their kid. They, whatever. And then other things where, and this is a big one. They think they've taken the business as high as it can go, right? So the seller's like, "Look, I've maxed this business out. It's doing $100,000 MRR, right? Monthly revenue. Like it can't get any bigger. I've maxed out all the channels. I've monetized as best I can. I'm gonna get out of here at the top." Right? And then you have a buyer who's like, "I don't get out of bed for businesses that are doing less than 100,000. I guess I'll take a flyer on this one because I know this channel, this channel, and this channel that they're not using." So they buy the business with the absolute intent of going, he missed the boat on all these other things. And the seller's going, "Oh, this guy's a sucker. He's buying my business because it's at the top." So that mismatch of kind of expectations on the buyer and seller side is how we do a lot of business. We do a lot of deals that way. Now, one of them is going to be right, right? And sometimes it's the seller and sometimes it's the buyer. So it really just depends. But they come in with totally different plan of attack on what they're going to do in the business.
On the brick and mortar side, I caution buyers all the time who have that mentality that, "Look, I'm gonna go buy this guy's company. I'm gonna fix this, 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 and this." And I was like, "Oh, cool. You know how to run a company better, straight out of Harvard, better than the guy that's ran it for 30 years, right? And it,
Mm.
had over 200 employees over the last 30 years and, 3 different locations and all the different stuff that guy's been through. You think you're gonna step in on day 1 and run it better than them?" There's an ego check that, I always kinda say, "Hey, think about it for a second. Make sure the companies have, like, a great profit margin." And they say, "Why is it so important to have a great profit margin? I can fix that." I was like, "No, you're gonna have to make some mistakes when you first learn how to fix that, and a good profit margin gives you room to make some errors."
Buffer. It's a buffer. Like 100%.
There's a reason why I like newsletters and online stuff. They have huge profit margins. I could screw them up for the first few weeks and still survive, right?
Yeah, you're right about that buffer with a higher margin. That's absolutely true. The thinner your margin is, you are razor thin on like the mistakes you can make. You know what I think is interesting? You know this as a vet, but like in the military, right? So I was in the Navy,
Yep.
and one of the concepts they have is they will bring in officers, and they have enlisted people, and the enlisted people technically work under the officer. The officer's in charge, so they'll bring in an ensign or a lieutenant JG that's like fresh out of school, right? Like they just finished whatever school they went to, and they're just getting to the boat. And so they're supposed to be in charge of this group that has senior enlisted guys that are E7s, E8s, right? That have been in the Navy 26 years or whatever and have seen everything. And they're in charge of them. So how it actually works is those senior enlisted act as mentors to the junior officers. Like they basically teach them the ropes, they
Mhm.
get them up to speed, and they help kind of train them. So I, we need something like that with entrepreneurship or with business where the Harvard MBAs come in and they can sit down and work with the kind of seasoned entrepreneurs and really get into the nuts and bolts of the business. I think something like that, some version of that might have been better for the all those private equity groups that are going to buy up the e-com businesses back in the day.
If you really dive into how search funds were created and how they work in the traditional method, that's exactly what's happening. So I interviewed David Dotson, who actually created the second or third search fund like in the world. The first ones came out of Harvard. He's OG. He actually teaches ETA now at Stanford University. So he teaches the entrepreneurship through acquisition. But the reason why most search funders they have usually 24 to 36 months to buy their first business is the initial funder. So they fund the search and then they fund the acquisition. The initial search, the initial process, they don't want them to find a business in the first 4 or 5 weeks or anything because they're mentoring them and there's some things about evaluating businesses and teaching them what to look for. And I've interviewed a lot of people in that search space. and they say, the guys that fund them, the limited partners and those guys, and they say we don't want the search funder to find something in the first 4 or 5 weeks. There's a lot of growth they have to do. Sure, they just graduated Harvard or they just graduated Stanford, and now these ETA programs are in all the schools. It's not just Ivy, but they just
Well, until they find that one actual business that is such a sweetheart deal, they're like, "Shit, this is too quick. This is too soon. That's a good
occasionally
one.
it
We gotta
happens,
get
but
it."
then they stay on and mentor. Like they take advisory
Yeah.
roles and they mentor those guys. They take it to task to make sure that that guy succeeds. Search funds have a high success rate because of that.
So, so on Web Street, right, where I was saying we pair the investors up with the experienced operators. One of the bits of experience we learned over time that is an absolute requirement now is they must have bought a business previously, particularly an online business. So, not just having operated even multiple businesses, they must have bought one previously. Which, I was talking to our operating partner about this. I was like, Mike, like that doesn't make a ton of sense to me because we even have buy side advisors
Mhm.
that work with them to help them through the process and like that their experience that have bought either themselves or through a bunch of other people have bought a ton of businesses. So they've got the help. If they might have the buying experience, he was like, no, man, like I can give you documented studies of like, if they haven't ever bought a business before, they won't find a business. They don't know how to look. They won't agree to like anything. It just doesn't work. We had one situation where we raised a bunch of money and then, we have a 3-month window, 3 months ish. If we're finishing a deal, we'll do it. We have 3 months to either use the money or lose it, or we return it to the investors, right? So we keep it on the T-bills or something. They get a bit of a return, but we don't want that money to just be unused. We don't go 6, 9, 12 months. So yeah, we've had one case at least where I think of the fund, I think we raised like 5 million for that fund and only spent like 1.5 million.
Yeah.
Right? Which for us is like a terrible deal because we found all the investors, got them to put the money in, got the operators together, looked at all these deals, spent so much time and effort to only have 1.5 go out. And we just sent the 3.5 back to the investors. And we're like, oh,
Yeah, that's a
and
tough thing.
they didn't want it. They were like, no, no, we won't want to do it. And we're like, I know, but we have this
Gotta
thing.
roll it
So we
over to
give
the
it back
next
to them
fund.
the
Yeah,
next one. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
exactly.
There's another thing about that though, and if you think about it, it takes a different level of skill set, even for your engineers and stuff, to take somebody else's tech stack and look at it and figure out how it works and all the little quirks in it and be happy with it that you can run it than it is to have built something over time and the insides and outs and the quirks of it. So to sit
Yeah.
there and be able to read somebody else's source code and how they configure their servers and everything that goes into a web space. And I know the space. I've run some of the biggest websites on the planet. Back in the day when Excite.com was head to head with Yahoo, I was the director of operations for Excite.com. So I don't know if you do that, but so I've run some of, two 30,000 square foot data centers at its peak. So, and I've run other tech startups and stuff with big data centers, big websites and big products. If you have to just jump into something like that and you've never built it, there's so many little quirks and things that happen and stuff to keep something running. It's a different thing. So I can see the skill set of being able to I've bought a tech-enabled business before, I bought a website ran business before, and I'm able to jump in and make things work is a totally different skill than, "Hey, I built one myself and sold it."
Yeah, for sure. We had this problem where we have buyers come to us and they're like, look, I kind of want to get into space. I've never run an online business before. I don't really have any skills, but I want to be involved. And so, we were like, look, honestly, you should probably either build one yourself or buy a small one and like dabble with it because you don't want to put all your money into this online business to replace your income. Let's say you need to replace 15,000 a month and they want to buy a $15,000 a month profit producing business. But like, look, if you've never done that before, you have no idea how it works. Like, that's probably not the best option for you. So we didn't really have much. They're like, well, do you have it like a course or something? We're like, no, like, you just got to go figure it out and come back to us. And we were like, this seems kind of crazy that we're like, they want to spend the money, but we're like, we have to tell them no, basically. Cause at least not yet. Get a small $30,000 site, making $1,000 a month to play with it, tinker with it for 6, 12 months.
Right.
So that's one of the reasons we started Web Street. It was like there was a lot of money that was looking to be. They wanted an investment vehicle they could put their money into, but they didn't have the skills at the time to run the business. Right? There's other people that they're running a full time business or they're heavily in like the e-com business and they want exposure to the affiliate or a SaaS
Mhm.
business, and so they want to do the fund because they're all up in in e-com and they want to make sure they have some of their online money is coming in from other stuff, SaaS or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was really interesting. But that's kind of like why we created Web Street. Is, I use my aunt as the example. She was like, "Look, I've got some money. I'd like to be involved in this online stuff." And I was like, "I mean, I love you, but you don't know how to run it." So
I mean, you want me to teach you what? I've had that conversation with too many relatives. Like, I wanna get into e-commerce and stuff. I wanna, because they'd see me starting websites and now owning blogs and
like, oh, that's cool.
oh,
Yeah,
awesome. You wanna be a you wanna write write a newsletter? Cool. Y You understand you have to learn all the software and all the, white labeling and, make sure you have a decent, like, if you're not gonna do all that stuff yourself, you better make sure you have a really good distributor for that does all that type of background work for you. A lot of people don't understand what's involved with some of this stuff, right?
yeah.
And, you know, I I've had
Different newsletters, but copywriting is a good skill to learn. I mean, even if you get up on some of the tech stuff or whatever,
yeah,
and you're like, "Oh, HubSpot, what? Salesforce, huh?" Right? That's fine, right? You can do some piece of it. You can do like the copywriting, get good at that. That's super helpful skill.
spent my money, been trained all that, read everything that Gary Holbert's done. I've done all that stuff, and I use ChatGPT right now, and I'll tweak it and edit it and, change the call to action just to fit my, yeah, everybody has their own flavor, but, I'll tell you, it took a task that would normally take 2 weeks to really analyze and create a customer persona and write something good down to 30 minutes. It's insane what it's able to do.
Yeah, when I think about the percentage of content, written content online right now that is AI created, inspired, or whatever, it makes me a little creeped out, dude.
Yeah.
Like almost all of
Yeah,
it. Yeah.
it's insane. We have 2 newsletters and this podcast gets converted into written articles and stuff like that, and it's all AI enabled. We have people who edit it. Their job is to read it and edit it, but nowadays, used to it take us probably 30 minutes to we feed the transcript, the video, and all that to the AI, and then tell it what we want it to put out. It would take 30 to 40 minutes to clean it up. Now it's 5 or 6 minutes. It's getting pretty good.
The AI editing tools are really cool. I think, right now they can't do video well enough to recreate your show,
Right.
but in 3 years, I don't know, man.
There
I don't know. You might not even be here. It might just be 2 bots talking to each other.
If you dig back to December, almost 2 years ago, there's an episode where I interviewed ChatGPT when it first came out, and that interview is not me. It's my voice, but I
Yeah,
actually had, Descript had just came out with their, deep fake where you could teach it your voice. So I gave
yeah,
it my script, as a and I actually I interviewed ChatGPT, took this transcript from it, fed it to there, made a voice for ChatGPT, made a voice for me that sounded like me, and the entire
yeah.
show doesn't have a video, of course, because it didn't do that back then. But it was one of my highest watched videos forever, and it did a good
It's
job.
our marketing director, Greg, did something similar. I think he, like, fed it, like, a few hours, 2, 3, 4 hours of audio or whatever,
Mhm.
and did some stuff with it and, like, sent to me, and I was like, "Damn, dude." I mean, it has your speech pattern, it
Yeah.
has your tone. There were a couple of things where it sounded a little warbly, where you're like, that was a little off." But, like, if you hadn't told me that it was, I might not have caught that straight, you know what I mean? Like, I might not have caught those little
Yeah,
odd
it's a little
bits.
monotone still. They're getting better. The latest version of ChatGPT can do voice inflections and sound excited and stuff, where previously to that, it was pretty straight tone. There's no it's monotone mostly. It wasn't like no excitement or anything like that in it. But, no, it's getting pretty, incredible what's out there.
Well, a lot of people ask, what is AI going to do to your industry, right? So we're in M&A, we're specifically in the online section of it, the online side of it, so to speak. So, I mean, it's definitely changing things, right? So, like content type sites. I mean, the search overall has kind of gone down. So, content type sites are going to be obviously heavily created by AI. The one thing we know is like we're agnostic to business model. So, in terms of like selling an online business, I don't particularly care the business model, and we've seen what was it like the T-shirt, Teespring businesses were around for a little while. We've seen some industries kind of come and go. Drop shipping is up and then down and up again. So we see all different types. We don't particularly care which it is. So we're open to all different types of monetizations. And the one thing I know for sure, if people are going to still want to do business, people are going to still want to be entrepreneurs, they're going to want to create new stuff. They're gonna wanna do these things. So doesn't mean people buy and sell in online businesses well into the future, AI or not.
There's some cool tools going out in there. I was talking to one guy who's, they're building something that does product descriptions, and it does A/B testing automatically. So
Mm,
it'll sit there and almost live, it'll tweak the product descriptions. The AI will. It'll just change it, and then it can detect how much traffic's went there, what did they how long did they stay on the page? It does, all kinds of stuff, and then it would make tweaks to it to, to try to perfect the A/B testing that a copywriter would normally spend, take a month to have to try to figure out, does this copy work better than this copy? Did this description
yeah.
work better than this? So they're automating a lot of that. I don't know where it's all gonna go. Like, other people think that we'll have to have some type of standardized income, by 2026 or something. I think it's further out than that, but I'll tell you what, when Tesla has a robot that can come to my house and do my dishes, I don't care if it's $20,000 or $80,000, I'll have one day to have it.
That would be wild. My business partner and I argued about this a little bit. I was like, "Look, I think we'll have, something close to, human-ish by 2030."
Yeah.
Right? And he's like, "No way, no way." So, like, I held him down the other day. We were talking, had a conversation about it. I was like, "Okay, you don't think that's gonna happen? You think it's impossible?" He's like, "Impossible." I was like, "Well, it's not that long. We'll see. We'll see soon enough."
Yeah. You'd be surprised how fast that stuff's changing, it's impressive. I think they're holding it back too because 'cause they're a little scared of it, so I think that they could, and maybe rightfully so, but, I think they could move faster than they are moving, and they've Elon and enough people that are highly intelligent have scared them enough to go, "You really ought to put some brakes on this and make sure this is safe." So,
But it's tough because it's not like they're competing, just against each other. They're competing against Chinese entrepreneurs and companies, the government. I mean, they're competing against so many people, and those some of them won't hold back. So
yeah,
if you don't get there, someone else will, and
yeah.
yeah, it might be a winner take all scenario, and you don't want to be left behind on that.
What happens when Google no longer is routing traffic, right? Because, currently, I don't Google half the stuff
Yeah,
I used to Google. I just go
for
straight to
sure.
ChatGPT or Proximity or one of the other tools and ask it, right? Now, sometimes I'll look at it because it still has some hallucination issues. So if I look at something really technical and I'm like, it seems fishy, I'll go back to Google and verify the data, but I don't start there anymore, and I think that a
Yeah.
lot of the traffic that used to end up on blogs and where I would look for a user's firsthand experience from a blog, ChatGPT just knows the answer to, right?
Or people are searching social media, right? YouTube, which is, owned by Google, but like they're searching YouTube as a search engine now,
Yeah.
not Google itself, Google proper. So yeah, I think that's interesting. I mean, you're definitely seeing a lot of different traffic sources that are not Google related or not Google search pop up on your analytics.
It's funny is, that you'd be surprised at what people are using it for. I like to cook sometimes when my wife, is, working or she has, going to do things with her friends or her sister or something, I'll do the cooking. And I just jump into, ChatGPT of all things and say, "I have chicken, I'm craving chicken, I have garlic, I have this, I have that. Give me some recipes I can make. Give me 5 recipes that I can do." And you'd be surprised what, like, the
Dude, this shit's wild. You can give very specific prompts. You can say, "Hey, I wanna do between like this, 300 to 600 calories per meal. I want it to be this. I wanna get this much protein in.
Mhm,
Can you give me, a list of the meals I'm gonna have for the week and the, shipping or the shopping list
mhm,
I need, to go get the stuff?"
yeah.
And it'll do it for you. It'll give you all the meals. It'll give you specifically how many calories there are, how much protein you're getting, and they'll give you the shopping list. You can just take that to the store. That's crazy.
It is, it's insane. I actually have, all those ad percent stuff. I still have over 100 domains of things I figured I would do someday. And one of the domains I have that like, one of these days I'm gonna do this as a side project, fun thing, is I own the domain everyspice.com. And all I was gonna do is take all the different spices out there 'cause I like to cook, list them in there, and if somebody says they click on 4 or 5 of it, it would give them a list that I correlate that with the database of, recipes, right? Well, I like
Well, with
garlic and
those
I like butter.
spices,
Yeah, you just go from the spices you have in the shelf, and maybe some staples, like, I have chicken, I have these things and stuff, and it would give you all the different things you make. Now, just there's no even sense in it, it's just, ChatGPT will do that in a split.
by the way, you just gave me a great. So I cook a lot too now because I got time on my hands. 'Cause I'm not working the business anymore. So I kind of like it. It's fun to cook. I
Yeah,
like coming up with like healthy, creative meals that use like good stuff. Anyway, it's fun for me, but yeah, that would I hadn't thought of doing that with ChatGPT. That's a great idea. Just give the spices and like, here's my meat I'm using. Give me some creative
Yeah.
ways to cook it. All right, Ron. Well, did we miss anything here? Do you have any other questions?
I think we're good, man. I think, first of all, how do people get a hold of, you, or how if somebody wants to work with you or have something that, they wanna show you or whatever, how do you prefer to be contacted?
Yeah, someone's looking to buy or sell
Mhm.
business, definitely go to empireflippers.com. They can take a look there. If you don't have the skills or time to run a business, you want to invest, or you're an operator that's run businesses and purchased businesses before, want to be considered for helping us raise money for you, then go over to webstreet.co. You can check that out. I'm on Twitter. It's just actually me on Twitter. Twitter, what is it? X.com/empireflippers. And you can chat with me. And
Mhm.
that's about it.
Well, I appreciate having you here today. Thank you very much for sharing your time and your knowledge, and we'll wrap that up and call it a show.
Thanks, Ron.
I want to announce our new channel partners, the ITX Marketplace. Since 1998, ITX has created $5 billion in value by selling more than 225 IT businesses in 20 countries. ITX works exclusively with IT-enabled businesses generating between 5 million and 30 million who are ready to be sold, and M&A decision makers who are ready to buy. For over 25 years, ITX has developed industry knowledge that helps determine whether a seller is a good fit for their buyers before making the match. ITX Mergers and Acquisition Marketplace we have partnered with has a proprietary database of 50,000 plus global buyers seeking IT service firms, managed service providers, Microsoft service providers, software as a service platforms, and channel partners with Microsoft, Oracle, ServiceNow, and the Salesforce space. If you have an IT enabled business you're ready to sell, I want you to visit the itexchangenet.com/marketplace. How to exit. That link will be in the show notes. Visit them now.